Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. This is day 3 of Around the League in 30 days, and we are in Atlanta to discuss the Braves. The boys are back. We're buzzing. We're feeling good about these breakdowns, and we get to a team that is near and dear to Will's heart, the Atlanta Braves,
Listen,
and
Peppy.
and Bobby as
His
well.
heart, his fist, his foot,
Yes.
whatever.
I'm just gonna ignore you and I'm gonna look at Tyler's dog in the background the entire time.
You can't even see him right now, but
He
he is
was on the
scratching.
couch. I could see him.
Oh, was he?
It was right over your shoulder. It was like your parrot. It was great. I was like, this is the most entertaining thing I've seen all day. Just a dog.
Way to go, Hank.
Frank, close enough. It's Frank.
Whatever. Way to go, Frank.
His government name is on the internet now. Thanks, man.
What is that? His government name, or is that his nickname? Because is that short for Francis?
It could be.
And do you spell Francis with an
do
I
you
or
call
an E?
your dogs two different names, man? It must be really confusing when you're
Dude,
training
I
them.
called my dog
Hey,
like
Steve,
2,000 different names. You kidding me?
Yeah, I was about to say, how many times have you called a dog Bub, Bubba, Bud?
Oh,
I
Butt
call my
head, smelly
dog
head,
Jackass.
idiot. Exactly.
Smelly one. Like,
yeah. There's a lot of ways we could go.
You need a bath. You stink.
All these names describe the Braves.
Or
yes,
better yet,
the Braves.
hey!
The Braves. The Braves. The Braves with an active offseason. You could definitely say a lot of subtractions more than additions, which we can look at their lineup now to discuss that. Of course, you still got the studs there that we know, but you see Jerks and Profar off of his stellar 2024 sitting there in the 2 spot. You got Jared Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz, who's a new addition, going to be splitting time in the outfield while Acuña still rests that injured right knee. But you got a lot of guys that underperformed last year, and that's something we'll get into here in a second. Austin Riley, Matt Olson. Of course, Azuna had a great year last year, really carried them for much of the season.
Then
But
he went to sleep in September.
after you said something about him,
I gave my praises, and he is like, "Watch me fail," which was
I
also
will
satisfying.
not compete with the great Shohei. I will not.
Not that he was going to be able to anyway, but regardless, a lot of the same familiar faces here. Then on the pitching side, a lot of different changes, right? You have, of course, Spencer Strider out until late April, but I think that's a better diagnosis than what we thought. So he'll get back a little bit sooner. Of course, the Cy Young winner, Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez. And then you got some question marks, I think, going toward 3 and 4. Schwellenbach was pretty good for them last year, so I'll give him his praises. But Grant Holmes and Ian Anderson, new names to the potential rotation. There's other names that we will talk about as well. And I think that bullpen takes a little bit of a hit too. You're not seeing guys like AJ Minter, who it feels
Just
like
a lot of it.
It feels like he's been there for forever. And he's gone now. So that is your look at the 2025 Atlanta Braves as we get into this one. As I said, your notable players coming back from injury. Acuña will be back in that mid to late May spot, hopefully. Strider back from that Tommy John surgery in late April. And then Austin Riley, people kind of forget because he had a down year, but did break his hand in August and missed the rest of the year. Those are your players returning. That's your lineups. And getting into the storyline, as we talked about, a lot of changes to that starting rotation. You're not seeing Max Fried, who has been so dominant for them and really a star for them for so long. Old man Charlie Morton gone to the Orioles. And these are guys that logged a lot of innings for them in the last few years. They're not there anymore. Of course, with the Strider injury, they're running a light here to start the season. How do you think, their rotation kind of compares to obviously seasons past? But do you think this is a rotation that can still help them compete without guys like Fried and Morton?
Compared to seasons past, I'm gonna actually say it's comparable at times. Last year, I think, was a lot better because the prior couple seasons, at least I know, definitely entering October, there was always some question, it seemed like, about depth at the time and maybe health. So I think compared to that, it's comparable because you still have those questions. But it's always weird, I feel like, to try to judge the Braves, only in that there have been a couple times in recent years where they've had slow starts and then suddenly they picked it up. And so I am definitely on the side right now that I'm not in love with the Braves rotation. I have a lot of question marks after the number 3 spot with whoever they go with, whether it's Holmes, Anderson, Elder, Smith, Shawver. But you're getting Strider back after a month. Even if he takes an extra month to kind of get back into a rhythm, if the Braves are still keeping up these getting hot late in the season trends, then that's fine. And as long as they're clicking on all cylinders by the time the postseason comes, they will be fine. But I will say, given how tight the East is, while it will keep them competitive, I don't feel like they did enough to solidify that they can be the division winner. Well, they definitely possible. The offense is amazing, but it's a lot of competition now with the Mets and the Phillies.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this was the Braves division for a long time. And while you still have a lot of those familiar faces, you don't have again, like the Max Frieds, the Charlie Mortons. John, the Orioles get Charlie Morton, which I don't think was really the guy that you were hoping for your team. But I do think in the case of the Braves, this is a big loss for them when you compound that with them losing Fried. So, I mean, what is your kind of take on this? Because as we said, there's a lot of question marks in that 4 to 5 hole.
You by losing Max Fried and Charlie Morton, I'll start with Charlie Morton. You lose that consistency of somebody who has been with your organization since 2021. He made that World Series run with you. This is somebody that really you could argue you built around, and it's going to be different. As far as Max Fried coming off of an injury, you know, he's somebody that you want to see more consistency from. His ERA of 3.25 last year is definitely not ideal if you're a team picking him up. But if you're
That's a
and
good
if you're
ERA.
it's a it, I mean
It is a good
for
ERA.
it's a good ERA, but at the same time, for compared to his 2.55 the year before,
Well, no shit, you're going to want 255 over 325. It doesn't mean 325 is bad.
yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm just making a comment that maybe he's on the downward. Also, he went to the Yankees, so I'm kind of hoping he's on the downward. Anyway,
There we go. That's the truth is popping its head out.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, in terms of losing both of these guys, you're losing cornerstones of your franchise in recent years, and it will affect morale. It has to. I am looking at Grant Holmes. I'm looking at Ian Anderson. I'm looking at these guys, and I'm seeing two young guys that haven't really gone through growing pains. Ian Anderson has gone through growing pains in terms of last year, especially with an ERA of 5. Holmes, not so much yet with their age, obviously, but
I'm going to jump in quickly. Anderson was recovering from Tommy John surgery last year. He hasn't pitched in the majors since like 2022 when his ERA was 5.
Yeah, so I was gonna say because wasn't Anderson was the guy that
So
did he pitch a game 7? Or
yeah, I mean he might have. So he was first 20. He was a 2020 rookie that stood out. Of course, only 7 starts, but whatever. But he still had a respectable 2021. So yeah, he was on that World Series team, and he might have pitched out of the bullpen or something that you're thinking of.
You are right. you are 100% right. I did not see the year.
The main thing they're dealing with is you're losing certainty. This part of it, and I don't just mean you're certain that Max Fried's going to get hurt because I don't want to be that cruel. Actually, yes, I do. What am I saying? But Charlie Morton's been consistent for the last like 3 or 4. Like he's basically pitched, I think, 30 games a season for the last like 6 years if you don't count the COVID season. And Max Fried, regardless of his health, has always been a low 3s, mid to upper 2s ERA type of guy. He is an ace, and just some years are more effective than others. And what you're basically replacing it with is Holmes, who was effective in the bullpen, was a little less effective in the rotation, but he got you through what you needed during some tough stretches. And Anderson, you're really taking a risk just because he hasn't pitched since 2022 in majors, though last year in the minors in 15 starts, he had a respectable ERA in the upper threes.
I was looking, by the way. So he wasn't a Game 7 starter, but he did start Game 3 in that World Series against the Astros and had a no hitter through 5 before they pulled him. So I was like, I definitely remember him from their playoff run having a big role there. We talk about the Braves and how good their offense is, but looking at last year, their rotation ERA was third best. So, um, that offense can make up for a lot of pitching problems, but this is a team last year, of course, a lot of injuries, but they barely got into the playoffs and their starting pitching was really good. So you have to hope from their standpoint that the guys on offense bounce back and stay healthy, because you're probably not going to have that consistency. I will say, it does feel like a team like the Braves will bring a guy like Ian Anderson back up and he'll just work, because that's how it kind of feels like it works for teams like this. Like they just have a factory of guys that they can just come in and they'll be stars.
Not the Braves recently.
I feel like that's expecting a lot out of Anderson, though. For
Oh,
any player,
this was
really.
the hope.
Yeah,
well, the Braves kind of.
I understand that was the hope, but it still feels like a lot of pressure to put on a player. And at his
That's
age of
today's generation.
what, 26?
Well, look, the thing for him, right, is when they get Strider back, if he pitches well enough, he can be their fifth guy. And this is a guy again that had highs with pitching in the World Series, and he was they were talking about him as like the next big thing for the Braves and started pitching. Didn't obviously work out that way with the injury, but I think if you're in that 5 spot and you can pitch well enough to be there, I think that's great for him. And I think like that'd be a really productive fifth starter as well, potentially. So
I don't foresee them finishing the season in the rotation.
it relies
Strider, the fifth guy to eat up.
Strider like is going to be big, right? Like again, it's one of those questions where can they stay afloat without Strider and Acuña for the first couple months of the season here, but I don't think it's bad. Like it's not. Sorry, it's not. It's bad. It's not as good as it was last year, the rotation. But I'm not as concerned about it. I think they'll find a way. Again, to at least stay afloat in the early season, and we'll see who really takes that 4th and 5th spot. But let's move on to kind of the injuries that plagued the Braves last season. I mean, it was bad. Obviously, Acuña with the torn ACL. Strider comes out. What was it? The first game of the season?
After his second game of the season.
Yeah, like was came out and then had the Tommy John surgery. So to have him come back,
it wasn't a full Tommy John.
It wasn't. You're right. It was the brace. Yeah, I was gonna say because I was like, wow, 12 months. That's actually insane.
Mm-hmm.
But still, for him to come back. Austin Riley with a broken ham. Michael Harris was out 2 months with a strained hamstring. Murphy missed 2 months after the first game of the season against the Phillies because the Phillies love injuring players, like Ketel Marte. And Ozzie Albies was out 2 months.
That was
with
payback,
a wrist.
I think.
So, look, I'm not gonna sit here and ask you guys, hey, can this team stay healthy? But based off of all the injuries last year and kind of the production they were getting from these guys last season, can they count on a lot of these players to be the guys they've been in seasons prior, like 2023, 2022, these explosive offenses that the Braves have? Like, Will, do you think that they get back to that point with their lineup?
Since most of these guys are still pretty young, yeah, I think they're going to bounce back. If they were a little older, then I would think maybe these injuries could take a bigger hit on their abilities. But at least from Riley I mean, I still have faith in Harris, even though he's up and down a bit. The Braves offense is going to be fine. I have a little bit more concern in what Acuña will do this year, only because of how he bounced back from the last time he tore. Was it the same ACL he tore last time?
The same. It was the right ACL. Yep.
So there's a little bit of concern there because he batted 266 with 15 home runs and a 764 OPS following that injury. So he didn't start the hottest last year either. But the Braves are far too talented. They're far too experienced to have one season where injuries got to them and probably frustration to be something that hinders over into another season. But I will fight Chris Sale getting hurt every year for the rest of his career as long as I live.
That's so messed up.
This dude will not stay healthy, but I will say he was healthy enough last year that he got a Cy Young, but he wasn't healthy when it came to the postseason, thankfully for the Braves. If there is a
enough to win the Cy Young.
Healthy enough. He was healthy enough to win the Cy Young. And I mean, I guess if you're going to get an injured Sale at the end of the season as a Braves fan, given his extension, you're probably happy it's in the year where everyone got hurt, so it felt like a throwaway chance.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the Braves fans probably knew. I think they were happy to get in, right? Like it comes down to the last doubleheader of the season. And they had so many guys out. Of course, people were like, "Oh, well, the year they won the World Series, Acuña was out, blah blah blah." So they're making comparisons, but
this was so much worse.
yeah, it was. I mean, they were so. It felt like every single like week they'd see like, "Oh, their star, he's out now." Like it was really bad. But John, I'll ask you this: we know how good Acuña is and how much of a superstar he is. They are going to be platooning two players out there in Kelnick and De La Cruz, as I said. So, I mean, do you think that they can do a good enough job to hold over the production that he eventually going to give them? I mean, obviously, when he comes back, it's going to be a big boost to that lineup.
I think that's the best you can hope for is that they hold on and not long enough and stay relevant enough where once Acuna comes back, that they are in the mix and are not too far out of it where the division is completely lost in say May or June, whenever he comes back. I mean, hell, if it's opening day like he wants, then then that's even better for them, honestly. But in terms of having like two platoon guys in your outfield, this outfield had a lot of question marks coming into the offseason, and it looks like that is going to carry over into the regular season. And that is concerning because your outfield is very important. We've seen how impactful a good or a bad outfield can be to a baseball team's success.
No half-assing balls again, Acuna.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think defensively, I will continue to say, I mean, Michael Harris can play left, right, and center field for them, so I don't think a defensive side it's as big of a deal. Like they bring in Profar, and I'm like, all right, whatever. Like again, Harris covers so much ground. It's definitely obviously the offensive.
Yeah, but that's
side,
expecting a lot.
New suggestion. Now, Braves are going to do the first ever one-man outfield. Everyone else plays infield. It does follow the rules.
This guy is just sprinting from pole to pole.
Dude, Michael Harris, an absolute menace in MLB The Show when you're trying to do a moment against the Braves and you gotta like get a hit and it's like in the gap and this guy just runs it down every time. Unbelievable.
More video game references.
More video game.
Great point there, Ty.
Thank you.
We're gonna base our opinions on the show.
Well, hey, I lived a real thing when he made that catch in the 2023 playoffs.
Oh yeah, that wasn't an insane catch. I think that like Kelnick, he was one of the guys when he came over from the Mariners. Like he's gonna come to the Braves and be like a 300 hitter. It didn't really work out. I think again he's good enough to hold over for Acuna, and then Brian De La Cruz, Pirates legend for all of 6 minutes.
I saw that eye roll.
Yeah, such a great acquisition. We finally did something last season, but we didn't resign him after like 2 months. Regardless, he is there to hold down the fort. Again, I think the bigger question, which we'll get into now, is can the Brave Stars bounce back? I think you can really look at Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Albies, Arcia, definitely, and Sean Murphy as guys that had down years. We'll start at the top with Matt Olson. Batted 247 last year, which doesn't sound all that bad, but when you look at his career stats, definitely down, and his home runs were way down. Only 29 last year after he hit 54 in 2023. Well, we know what kind of player Matt Olson can be. What are the numbers last year tell you about, what could potentially happen for him this year?
Well, based on Matt Olson, I expect more power. 29 home runs is a little light, and he got hot late in the season. Same went with Riley even before his injury. He started out really slow, but before he had the injury in August, he was kind of getting back to his old self, and then just season was over. So these guys are way too experienced and they'll bounce back fine. But I think the main thing is you just got to make sure that um you get the 30 home run guys back up there. He had really one consistent productive offensive hitter last season in Ozuna. Everyone else was, you had tails and valleys. Like it was just, and they were like crazy how it was hot one minute and was really ice cold the next. And then you were hurt.
Yeah. And Matt Olson, the 790 OPS last year, worse since the COVID shortened season. And we kind of know what player to expect, what player we're getting out of him, like since he's been with the Braves. So last year, again, not like a horrible year, but definitely down for his standards. You touched on Austin Riley. This is a guy, John, I'll go for you on this one. This is a guy that has kind of been. I realize how much of Chris Collinsworth I am, by the way, right now. Here's a guy who I just realized that.
You might want to pick a different saying,
yeah,
buddy.
I'll think about it. Austin Riley has been a great player for them. Has been around for a while as well. But a down year last year. How does he bounce back? Because I mean, a 256 average last year, which was pretty low again for his standards.
Yeah, just a little bit. Considering what he has done in the past and how consistent he's been, it's the name of the game, and that's the thing that the Braves always seem to do well is that everyone is consistent. They can hit home runs, they can they can get on base. They can hit to get on base. They can walk to get on base, whatever the case may be. And it just seemed like last year, on top of the injuries, it just felt like that wasn't there for their key guys, whether they were injured or whether or not they were just not producing. So that's a key, regardless of who you're talking about, from this year to last year. Is be consistent, be who you are, and be the Braves. Otherwise, this might be a case of, hey, we need to start moving things around.
Be the White Sox. Don't be productive.
And I think that you're looking at the last guy here of like, you can really say, oh, star players that were down last year was Ozzy Albies. Granted, only in 99 games, but hit 251. Hey, John. And a 302 on base. It's okay. But, Will, like, again, I think he's kind of like, when you look at the list of players, like the other star, again, Arcia was bad last year. Murphy was horrible, but another player, I think, for the Braves that if they want to bounce back and be consistent on offense, he is going to have to pick it up.
He's actually the one that I don't have as much faith in, and also I think is expendable. Thing about Albies is he's had a couple. I mean, he's been kind of the newer model for, I say newer model for a second baseman. He's more of a power guy, which is always odd, it feels like, to say at second base, though. Of course, I'm used to Chase Utley in the years that he was fighting Dan Uggla for most home runs for his second baseman. But Ozzy Albies has a couple 30 home run seasons in his career, but over the last 5 seasons, he's only got one season where he's hit over an 800 OPS. And last season, yes, it was the worst of his career, but he was hurt a lot. Second worst. Two injuries in 2022 actually made him worse that season. So I feel like he's a player that he's more of a luxury than a necessity. You need that top of the order to be productive. If Albies was more so plugged into the 2-hole, then maybe. Looks like they're going to have Profar there. When Acuña's back, he'll be leading off. But as long as you have some combination of like Riley, Ozuna, Olson, or Acuña hitting at the top of the order, everything else in the Braves lineup, because it's so deep, is a luxury.
Yeah. I'm actually going to go back to you on this player because of the irony of what happened with Orlando Arcia. Ever since he started mocking Bryce Harper, it's gone really bad for him. 218, 271, 354 slash last year. Worst since signing with the Braves. Bobby turned his lights on. He has something to say about it. 625 OPS.
I'm guessing he's going to drop his background or something on his phone, which, yep.
There it is.
I was about to say, wow, your phone's looking great.
The fact that he's got it's the dirt and the grass of the infield is not working with the green screen. But
look, I think if you're Arcia, you don't have to be the guy, of course. They have plenty of other people that can be productive, but I mean, he sucked last year. Like, he really was bad.
well, one player that they lost that I feel like could hurt them more than they realize. Now I know there's a young guy, I think, in the system that they're expecting to get better, and I think be a bench job, but is losing Darno and basically giving Sean Murphy now everyday jobs. I understand 2023 for like the first half of the season he was like stellar. He has not been good.
No.
Like, he has not been good. He was not good last year. He was not good in the second half of 23, and he was really bad in the postseason. Like, he has just been this giant question mark, and Darno was someone that I felt like you kind of screwed over with, oh, we're going to get Murphy. He's going to be our new guy, and Darno's just kind of, goodbye.
I mean, I was going to ask the question, right? Because I think that there's a line of, hey, like, if we have a really good defensive catcher, we can live with whatever numbers. But the 193 from Murphy last year, you can't live with that. Like, that's the issue. And I wonder, like, what numbers they're comfortable with. But I agree. I was actually going to mention that too. I think Darno leaving is big because they kind of had like not like a platoon thing kind of ish, but like, when they need like a hit from their catching position last year, like it was him that was doing it, Darno, and he's not there anymore. So again, Arcia and Murphy don't have to be guys that are batting 300 with 40 home runs, but they do certainly need to bat above 218 for that lineup to be, because look, we hold this is for any of the big teams. The expectation for a team like the Braves is still very high, where, if you want to compete with the Dodgers, as they're the benchmark, and this is a team that I think has the possibility to do it if all things are clicking, but you need your guys at the bottom of the lineup to produce more than that. That's just plain and simple. Yeah, I mean, that's my last point on it, John. I don't know if you have anything to add, but they got to get production from their stars, obviously, but that was a big thing for me, seeing Arcia stats and Murphy stats, and now you're going to be relying on them and a platoon outfield job, so it's going to be interesting for sure.
Health in the rotation.
I mean, yeah, I said earlier, you have to be consistent, and that's how you stay consistent, is do exactly what you just said. So
yeah, they do
Health
bring in
rotation.
Speaking of consistency, they bring in Jurickson Profar, who was phenomenal last year in 2024, but he was fine.
He was fine.
But for his standards, for a guy who
those are low standards.
They are. They are, but you have to understand, like, this is a guy. I did it again. This is a guy. Was he not like a top 100 prospect, or am I?
He was a top second base prospect for the Rangers, I believe.
Yeah, because I always mix him and Odor up, but I was gonna say I'm pretty sure he was like, because he started playing at, I think, age 20 season, now 31.
Yeah, he started really young.
Like, he had a lot of potential, really never hit that, but last year you started to see the 280, 380, 459 slash. But Will, like, I mean, you're kind of alluding to, it sounds like you're not as high on the signing. There's a lot of risk, I think, with this move.
His last season was a tale of two halves. The one thing that was true is that overall his offensive numbers were up compared to his career average. But in the first half last year, which is the thing people are remembering him most for, he batted 305, 14 home runs, made the All-Star team. The second half, home runs were still up with 10 and had a 434 slugging percentage, which is above his average slugging percentage for the three previous seasons. But his average was a lot closer to what he usually hits at 243. And that's the Profar I think you're going to get as the Braves. I mean, he might have hot stretches where It feels like he can hit everything, but I mean, was a 239 hitter, 11 home runs, 54 RBIs on average between 2021 and 2023 with a 366 slugging percentage. His like his strength or his norm is just not striking out, walking, and putting the bat on the ball. So he just gets success if those pitches fall. If he can just get on base and be a table setter for the rest of that Braves lineup behind him, then he's going to be golden, especially because his defense is not.
Right. And, I think that it's kind of funny to look at it now because we really, at least I wasn't thinking Profar to Atlanta was a thing, but like they're happy to have him at least for, yeah, again, without Acuña, because all right, you can have Acuña out there and Harris and have like a Kelnick and left. That's fine. But to not have Acuña right now, only have Harris out there, you needed another guy that shows at least some promise to be a good hitter at the top of your lineup. It's projected to be plugged into that second spot. So I mean, John, we've seen what he did with San Diego last year. Honestly, at times, literally carried that team. Similar, not to the same extent, but similar to what Ozuna did, where it felt like he was the only guy hitting on the team. So, what do you think this means for Atlanta? Again, getting a guy that you can have at least a little bit of confidence he's going to be productive.
I think what it means for Atlanta is that they're on a hope and a prayer that he doesn't hurt them so much that that they have to essentially have two platoon guys out there since they already have one in right field. What it comes down to, I think last year was a real unicorn season for him. Over his many years here in MLB, he has flirted around the low 200s for batting average to really just being an average player at best. So, frankly, if he can get on base and set the table like Will said, then yeah, that is the best case scenario. But what he did last year is going to be an anomaly, and his numbers and consistency just show that. There's no other if, ands, or buts around it.
I want to jump real quick to the win total. Will kind of mentioned it earlier, but the 93 wins that they have them at. I I would
It's
say
generous.
I would certainly say that this lineup is worse than last year's, and I would assume you agree, correct?
When the season started or when it ended?
Oh, good. When the season started.
Then yes, it's worse because
Yes,
Acuña's not in there coming off
right.
of an MVP season where you think he's a god.
So
Yeah, it's worse.
So for the league last year where no team hit 100 wins, and I don't think we can expect that every year. But when you have the Phillies who continue to get better, when you have the Mets who obviously took a big step this offseason, I feel like the number's high. Am I
Yeah, the
crazy?
Braves did not do enough with pitching in general, bullpen and rotation. It is feels like purely based on the trends of previous seasons and the fact that in general their offense is the same, and they're getting Acuña back a month and a half to 2 months into the season, so they're not going to be without him. Pacoda especially hates the Phillies. I think it's because of the defense. I don't really care what Pacoda thinks. They've always hated the Phillies and they're always wrong. But yeah, no, the pitching was the big thing the Braves did not address at all in the free agent market this season. And that's going to be the thing that I think hurts them. If not the entire season, it's going to be enough to put them back early in the season that they're not quite going to be able to climb enough back, maybe enough to get in the second place if the Mets or Phillies are, kind of struggling with whatever the heck they have going on. But the Braves winning, I think 90 games is even generous.
I mean, John, do you think so? We kind of talked about this with Diamondbacks, right? You're only really expecting one team out of the NL Central. You're expecting the Dodgers to win, so do you get a Diamondbacks in like to a wild card spot? Maybe the Padres, but I'm kind of down on them this year. And then you have the NL East, which kind of has your three teams that have been around that. Based on that, I mean, do you think this is still a playoff team? Obviously, they lose a lot, but they could still be in good position to get in.
Honestly, I'll I'll put it this way. I agree with Will that 93 wins is very generous, and I think it's going off reputation alone. I do not think that this is even a 90-win team. I think it is honestly, this is Pacoda looking at things as a. To me, this feels like a team kind of like the 2017 Orioles in the sense of going off of, let's just keep the same guys and expect the same result and not switch things up and just, hope for the best. It does not really strike me as a team that is dangerous or that even improved to any stretch of the imagination. Uh, I don't think that they should be in the playoffs. I think that they are the last seed again, if they are in the playoffs. And frankly, I said I said the other day that you know that the Diamondbacks I don't see in the playoffs. I don't think that the Braves deserve to be in the playoffs, but I feel like they'll pull it out at the end just because of who they're going to get back, with Acuña.
That is very important because that's one thing. Really, it's the beginning of the season how well they can stay afloat as everyone gets back. Because if the Braves can be healthy entering the postseason with all their guys back, and health is health of the rotation. I'm going to keep preaching that for them. And I'm not just talking about Sale this time. It's just in general. But if they can have all the pieces back by the postseason, and they did enough to stay afloat early on, then I think then it's a whole new ball game. Do whatever you want. Just don't expect to buy. I just hate the Braves pitching depth. Again, it is always the issue. It's still the issue. And this year, more than ever, it feels worse.
Do you hate their
the best they can hope for is to tread water till the end of May, June, or July, and then
I don't
really
think
start
they need
swimming.
to tread, but I mean,
They can't let it sink. Can't fall behind.
You could say they're sailing to glory. Like, it's not just tread water and die. Like, there's another option, John.
Sailing. Good job on that.
I mean, I just think until they get their big star, until they get their big star back and their big stars back, I don't see this team doing anything.
Well, so this is what I'm checking quickly. Sorry, you asked your question. I'm looking at the schedule.
I was going to say, do you have more concerns about their starting pitching depth or their bullpen depth?
For the entire season or the beginning?
The entire season.
Bullpens you can trade for. I mean, I know you can say the same answer about the rotation, but I feel like it's more common with teams to plug holes in the rotation as the season goes on, because that's when you find out who are the people that are actually performing this season, who are the duds, because we've said it's kind of a crapshoot when it comes to assembling a bullpen, especially out of free agency. The rotation has been an ongoing thing, but they're at least getting Strider back. And when the postseason comes, they just need 4 guys to make it through. And teams have shown recently you could probably get by with 3. The problem with the Braves situation is that I'm always going to harp about Sale's injury history. 29 games last season, yeah, but he still got hurt at the worst possible time. He only pitched 31 games the previous 3 or 4 seasons combined. So it's still something you have to take into account, and the fact that he's only getting older. Ronaldo Lopez was switched from a bullpen guy to a starter last season. He pitched insanely well. I do believe he got snubbed when it came to looking at Cy Young voting. That being said, he still had periods where he was hurt. And so there's going to be the questions again of, he was so good. Can he do that a second time? Or is he going to kind of reach the peak or whatever of productiveness, because he was a starter before, it had issues, and that's why he was in the bullpen in the first place. And then after that, you're getting to guys that have had either 1 year experience or 1 or 2 years of partial experience.
Yeah.
And the Braves, year after year, seem to hit guys, as you were alluding to at the very beginning of the episode, where it seemed like they were hitting their young pitchers, that their generation was bright, or the future was bright with the next generation. Then they got to Anderson, or I shouldn't say they got to Anderson. It was more when they got to the third year of Anderson, and then Strider came up, and then that's when Anderson got hurt, and suddenly all the fillers after that stopped performing, and it was the Braves finally had hit that peak of young talent, and no one has still showed anything with the Braves that can be productive. So they're basically going off of a lot of high probabilities that could work, but there's a lot of uncertainties still. But the Braves have an okay back end of the closing situation. Those middle innings are where it would be a little more dicey.
Yeah. We will see. I think the
Their
NL
schedule's
East.
also hard as fuck at the beginning of the season. Have fun.
Oh,
If
really?
I could caveat off of your question here and answer
Yes.
what I think.
Go,
I
and then
don't
I'm
think
gonna
it's
go
going to be
off.
their pitching one way or the other. I think it's going to be their lineup. I think that's where their issue is going to be. I don't foresee these guys being consistent here. I really think they're going to be feast or famine, and that is not a recipe for success.
I think.
So the
Go ahead.
Braves scheduled to start the season. Padres, Dodgers, Marlins, Phillies, Rays, Blue Jays, Twins, Cardinals, Diamondbacks, and then ending with the Rockies. That's April.
Yeah, that's tough.
Not
Jesus,
gonna go
that
on.
is only
Not
two
going to go on
teams
into May,
in that
but
month
they face
are
the
not
Dodgers
potential
again.
playoffs.
Yeah, go into the next month, then you get the Dodgers to start it off. So like their May is so much better than their April, but still, 1 month can make a big difference in a tight division.
Especially when you want those early, those easy matchups early because of, again, you get guys coming back from injuries. So it'll be interesting, man.
Realistically, I think that April is going to be very painful for them, and they're going to need to try and tread water.
Yeah,
Like I said,
they just got to stay afloat. They just got to stay afloat, and if they give
They're
themselves a
still going to be
chance.
a playoff team, though.
Hey,
There's
look,
no doubt in my
I
mind.
was gonna
until
say,
reinforcements come, you got to stay afloat.
I mean, look, they as for as bad as they were last year, considering their standards, they got in. So, yeah, I mean, you got to give it to them. This is a team that continues to pull it out year after year. But that is all for day 3 of Around the League in 30 days. The Atlanta Braves are done. Up next, the Baltimore Orioles. We'll be getting to that tomorrow. But if you are enjoying these, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, all that good stuff. You can find us at Twitter on BL_breakdown, big league breakdowns everywhere else. And again, we will be continuing this grind. So look out for all the content that we'll be posting. But that is all for this one. We will see you next time.
Wear your seatbelt.